Recognize that, and we have within our company and in our business that life's still going to happen, and the rate is the rate. But we're focused on the opportunity that comes by way of this, and that's the way that I think everyone should look at it. Whatever's going on in any market, whether it's negative, whatever, where's the opportunity in this? Whatever bad news comes or disruption or whatever, there's an opportunity in all of it. You just got to find it, right? This is the difference between the ultra successful and the people that are still scratching their heads waiting for perfect pastures, because you're never going to get them.
A leader has to take the risks.
Daniel, what's up, man?
Hello, my main man. What's going on, brother?
How are you, brother?
I'm doing good. Hey, say your name so that way I make sure I got it right. You know, I don't want to screw it up, man. I know your last name is Dhingra because I used to have a real good friend in high school. Her last name was
No
Dhingra.
way.
Yeah,
Nobody ever tells me that, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Normally that's the one people need help with, but you're good. So you just say Arjun.
Arjun. Okay. All right. I was
Arjun,
figuring that, but yeah, that's
Arjun,
awesome, man. So
sweet, man. I was just reading up on your bio, man. Like you were gonna be a professional baseball player, take it up to that level, and then what was it an injury?
I don't know if I would go that far. I wouldn't say I was going to be a professional. I mean, that was obviously that's a child, that's a kid's dream. But I probably, my biceps aren't big enough. I probably don't have the height for professional. But I was a good baseball player. I will say I was a pretty good baseball player up until college until I got hurt. But I don't think I'd have ever made pros. But
all right, you're on you're in Ontario, I think, right?
I'm actually in Newport Beach, believe it or not.
Beautiful place.
I'm in Newport Beach now. I did have an office in Ontario, and then now I'm kind of in Montclair. And so, where are you at right now?
I'm in San Francisco. I got married in Newport Beach.
Nice.
My wife and we got married at the Pelican. So nice. we love Newport, man. That's a very I think it's one of the most beautiful places in the world.
You can't find a better, nicer place to get married than Newport Beach, Pelican Hill, man. So, so did you play golf?
I do. I'm like the world's shittiest golfer, no doubt, man. But yeah, that's not my thing at all.
Well, when you can kick people's asses, it's okay that you can't play golf. It's like, some of us are good at some things and some of us aren't good at other things. So, all right, man. All right. So let's talk. Arjun Dhingra. You are a champion Taekwondo coach, and of course you fought for many years. And I just this is such an exciting thing to have you on Wealth on the Beach Club, and a Wealth on the Beach podcast today. And we're just excited because look, for the last 4 or 5 years, man, I wanted to get to know successful people. I just wanted to get to know people with awesome stories about success and even having some failures. We're going to talk about some of your failures today and some of the challenging times, because anybody could look at Instagram and say, oh my God, they're so successful. Everything probably always went right for them. And it's just, that's not real and that's not life. And so when you did win in 2007, when you knew you were the champ of the world, how did that feel, man?
It's so strange. And I appreciate you, saying all that stuff, man, and even researching it. It means a lot. I was just literally going back to that moment this morning when I was at the gym and I was working out. I try and do at least one Taekwondo workout a week. It's just good for the brain, and mixing it in with everything else. But I always channel and go back to that moment in 2007. And that's funny. And then you're asking me about it today. It was a culmination of everything. There's a wave of emotions. There's shock. There's a little bit of disbelief. Then there's also this like full circle moment of like your childhood dream. Because every kid who watches sports, and you're a big fan of sports, everybody who is enamored by competition and the game, if you will, they always envision what would it be like to be on a podium and have my national anthem played and a medal placed around my neck, right? Like, and then I'm like, shit, it's actually going to happen. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get to hear, the national anthem, like Stars and Stripes all day. So this is great. So it was a wave of everything, but it's something you don't forget. They always, the joke, you never forget your first. The second one meant more, but the first was so impactful because it unlocked all of this growth and possibility from there. And it also came at a time, tying it back to business, when the market was about to crash. 2007, next year, basically everything, like my entire financial world got turned completely upside down. So I had this euphoric moment followed by like a complete earthquake. So yeah, I mean, but there's stuff that I still draw from it to this day, and I'm sure we're gonna get into that here, like in how it applies. But yeah, it was an incredible moment, something you never forget. And like I said, you never forget your first.
Yeah. And then I was also taking a look. So talking about the successes, right? And then a couple of years later, you get beat, right? And then you come back to Rome, and then you end up winning in Rome, right? Is that kind of what happened there?
Man.
And how'd you get beat? How'd you get beat, man? Why'd you lose?
You know the story better than I do. This is great. You know what? Look, I think the greatest lessons you're ever going to get in life are from the losses, because losses are really lessons, right? And it's a cliche and it's silly, but it's very true. If I took, because the world championships at that time were happening every 2 to 3 years. So 2007, I won. The next one was in 2010. It was in Korea. I sat that one out because I didn't think I would necessarily compete again. My sister was getting married that year, and it was just a lot. And my mom actually, who's always been like in my ear about this stuff, she took me to my first lesson when I was 8 years old, dragged me on the floor and embarrassed me in front of everyone. And then she's been there with me through, every single event except for the final one. But she kind of talked me out of it. And I was like, okay, so I sat up. But then the fire was still there. I'm like, you can do something great once, and sometimes people say you got lucky. Maybe it was just great timing. It was a beautiful intersection of you being prepared and seizing the moment. That's the definition of luck, as they say. Or we can say that we have staying power and you really belong, right? If you can do something twice, like, okay, you really were that good. So I kind of took it as a personal challenge. I didn't change anything really. I kept the same team, which I think is important, whether it's finance, athletics, whatever it is, like your team of people, your tribe, your crew, your advisors, the people who keep close to you. When you got a good thing, you don't need to break it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. People try and get too complicated with this stuff, especially in sports. They're like, oh, I need this new cool training thing, or hire that new state-of-the-art trainer. You can kind of get ADD with this stuff rather than just focusing on what needs to be done. So I kept my team intact. I added a mindset coach who I'd started working with during the market crash from the mortgage and real estate business, and I'm still with him today. He's still my business/mindset life coach, if you will. So he was the only new addition, but I kept it on there. And it didn't work out. It was a very close split decision, 3-2 against the national champion from Argentina, who went on to win the silver medal. He didn't end up winning the group. And I still remember that moment in my hand not being raised. And it was like, man, there was a lot of things also going on in my life at that time. A breakup with a 5-year relationship. My dad got diagnosed with cancer earlier there. And these are not excuses. The reason I'm saying all these things, because there were no excuses. I fully prepared. I didn't leave anything on the table. I can't look back and say, man, if I didn't have that stuff going on, I would have been better. No, I was fully prepared, fit, sound of mind. But there's also something to be said about what else is going on in your universe at the time, right? And sometimes you win or you achieve in spite of those things. Other times, maybe it just wasn't right. But that loss ended up being the best thing that happened to me, because if I had just won and said, I'm good here, never actually experienced what it's like to recalibrate yourself, or what I call the Rocky 3 moment, where he had to kind of, he got nearly killed by Clubber Lang, his manager died, and then he had to put himself back together again in some unlikely of circumstances, but he came back so much better. That 2.0 version was so much better. So I kind of saw, like, the moment I lost, it was in my head, I'm like, no, we're not done, because I was planning to retire right after that one. My goal was like, we're going to win another one. We'll be done. I'll kind of get, cement myself as somebody who belongs, 2 gold medals, and then right, but gold medal and then no medal. I was like, okay, so we got to win and we got a loss. There's only one way to break this, right? And find out. So the moment for Rome actually kind of started happening right then, even though I didn't know it was in Rome. And there's a very special story behind why Rome became so inspiring, which I can get into later. But yeah, the loss was the greatest thing that happened. And then started moving forward, which was just 2 years later. And then everything came full circle in Rome, which is still one of my favorite cities in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting too, talking to champions and people that have had a lot of success, a lot of us don't realize, and I don't know if anybody caught when you were talking about you were 8 years old, And I think that it's interesting because we look at people that are having success. I'll give you kind of a story about Paul Walker. He's the actor guy, and I used to do. Some people know this, but I used to do extra work on movies. I was actually in Pretty Woman. I was in the background in.
Get out of here.
I was an extra in. You barely could see like half of my head, I think, but I was in the movie. But I used to do all these different, like Charles in Charge and all these different little TV shows and commercials and stuff. And when I was on Charles in Charge one time, I saw Paul Walker, but he was only like 14 years old. I was 14 and he was 14. And I just always remember that, he was a nobody. He was just some kid. Now he did have a speaking part, very small speaking part, but he was nobody. Nobody knew who he was, and he had never had success in his life. He had never done anything big, and it wasn't until he was probably acting at 8 years old, and there he was 14, still never had success. And then you're talking, he didn't get successful till he was over 30. Until Fast and Furious, right? So, and so to look at somebody like yourself, how old were you how old were you in 2007?
2007, I was 27.
27. So from 8 years old to 27, you were training and fighting, and I'm sure you won tournaments and all that kind of stuff, but you didn't have your big break until 20 years later. And we talk about the 10,000 hour rule, and we talk about how it takes time for people to win, and it takes time to have success. And even when you have success, you're not solidified for the rest of your life to have success forever, right? I mean, you're still gonna go through ups and downs. You're still gonna have failures. Still gonna have trials and tribulations. And so for you to come back a couple of years later and say, look, all right, now you're over 30 at this point, and you're going, all right, now I got to get this thing done, and I'm going for it. And so tell me about Rome.
So at the time, and maybe I've got my numbers wrong, because I was 36 in Rome. So that was 2014. So 7 years back would have been 20, I guess, 28 or 29 when England happened. So that was 2007. So so Rome, and I appreciate you saying that, because look, I always say this, and I've even said this to the athletes I've coached, because I went on to coach for a number of years for Team USA. Sometimes when you win too early, it's a huge disservice, right? Or when we experience success too early, right? Like I came from the mortgage industry. In 2001, 2002, when the market was just about to take off, you start making stupid money at such a young age. And I mean, stupid money. And you think, oh, this is just the way it is. But you haven't been dealt the loss or the setback, which is actually where you're going to learn and, develop a little bit of, humility as well. But if you don't get those losses or those setbacks, if you're just always rewarded with the gratification of a victory or a win or success or money, you're cheated out of the big picture experience that the universe is actually needing to show you or teach you. And sometimes people aren't paying attention to that. They just play the victim role when they do get the setback or they do lose, rather than actually say, okay, let's stop here and check in. What was it? What is it? And that's where work, whether it's in therapy or working with mentors or other coaches, you got to go a little bit deeper and not necessarily analyze why I didn't win, but what's the lesson here? Or what else could I do? How else could I grow? How else could I put more? Because we can always increase the output, right? Even though we said we're maxed out, we can always increase the output. So I think that's what you have. That's the absolute only way that I've ever chosen to accept setbacks, defeats, losses, lessons, hurdles, adversity, is that there's this big lesson here that I'm supposed to learn. And even if you don't have it in the moment, you still spend the time there, be patient with it, because it can't happen. Like you said, it was 20 years from my big moment, right? Even though I wasn't necessarily searching for it all along, but you'll have your moment when you're supposed to have your moment. You got to be patient. Success, whatever it is you're trying to do, it takes time. There's no such thing as instant stuff. To your point earlier, even with social media, we see all these things. We think these people had it so easy, or they're winning. Why am I not winning? No, it's not. You have no idea what's gone on into it. And I used to even say this thing whenever somebody told me, hey, you're really talented. And I would say, you know what? I appreciate you saying that, because I know it's coming from a good place, but I actually take real issue with that, because to say I'm talented, actually diminishes all of the work that I've put into my craft, the hours of sweat. I'm not talented. I'm actually very untalented. I just refuse to be outworked. That's it. I'm stubborn in my refusal to be outworked. So that's the mindset and the approach. But the way Rome happened, I knew I had unfinished business. I knew in the back of my mind, and they hadn't established that Rome was going to be the location. And I say that because there's a special story behind this, which I'll quickly share with you, man. So my best friend that was studying in Italy when we were in college, broke as all hell. I maxed out a credit card to go stay with him for spring break my senior year. This was like months before I actually ended up getting into the mortgage business in 2001. And we toured all around, but we went to Rome. I mean, we were eating at McDonald's and sleeping on trains or in hostels, but it was the greatest trip of my life, man. Like, so broke, but just, we didn't have a care in the world, two college guys, whatever. And Gladiator was just a few years out, right? And everyone knows the movie. It's amazing, right? So when you're at the Coliseum, right, like you just take in all those vibes, like, wow, this is where you imagine so many battles and victories, losses, tragedy. I mean, it's such a huge milestone of history. But we sat outside, we were drinking Cokes, I'll never forget it, out of a bottle, which is the best Coke there is, right? It's the real Coke, made with real sugar in Europe. But we were sitting out there kind of outside after we'd done a tour inside, and we were just looking around like, one of these days, man, we're going to come back here. When we have money, maybe we'll come back with our wives and kids. One day we'll come back. I'm like, yeah, for sure, man, because we are dead broke. It'd be nice to eat a real meal, but let's go back to McDonald's and walk it off. And he ended up committing suicide a few years later. And, there's not a day that really goes by I haven't thought of him because I was so young at that time. He was one of my closest friends. There's a group of 7 of us, and he was one of the 7. But I always thought in my mind, man, one of these days I'll go back. So when they announced that Rome would be the host site, because it wasn't supposed to be. This is why I believe it was so much fate. It was actually supposed to have been hosted in Sardinia, Italy, the World Championships. But they had to move it. There was a big issue, and they said, we're going to move it to Rome, easier city, international destination. I had this very, very strong calling, almost like just like a lightning bolt through me. And that night, I still remember it, I woke up to this like whisper in my ear that said, meet me at the Coliseum. It was my buddy saying it. I said, I'm going back. I said, now I will not be stopped. Like, there's a calling here, there's a mission, and we all need purpose in everything we're doing, guys. You have to find it. In my case, it was a little bit of a confluence of the past, of a promise that needed to still be kept, and then an emotional moment. But I was like, okay, I'm not short of any fuel now or purpose. This is gonna fucking happen. We're gonna make this happen. So I gave everything. And when I mean everything, I literally left nothing in every day, whether it was mental training or it was mindset approach. So we made this promise that we'd go back to Rome, right? We were just sitting there, broke college students, and that we'd come back one day when we had money in our pocket and we were marrying at our kids or whatever. But it never happened because a few years later, he ended up committing suicide. He got himself into debt, was around the wrong people. And so it, weighed heavy on me, and, not too many days go by, I don't think about him. But, bringing it back to where I was at that time, the World Championships were not announced to be in Rome. They were actually meant to be in another city. And this is why I feel it was so much of fate that made this perfect ending, for an athlete or a human being get to happen. But they were supposed to have been held in Sardinia, Italy. Something happened with the venue and some financial challenge or whatever. So the host committee made this big announcement that the World Championships will be held in Rome, Italy. Probably where they should have done it anyways, but maybe it was going to be too expensive because it's a major city. But I don't know, like, there was something when they made the announcement, this like lightning bolt that went through me of like, shit, man, I'm supposed to go back there. And then I started thinking about my buddy, because the last time I was in that city, I was with him, but we were in college, and so many years now have gone by. I was, 22 at that time when I was with him there. And now I'm 36 when they're making this announcement. I'm like, okay, something here. I went to bed that night. I still remember it like yesterday. When I woke up in the morning, as I was coming out of my sleep, there was like this whisper in my ear. Call it the universe, call it my imagination. I don't know what you want to call it, whatever you believe in, that's out there, that's powerful. And it was his voice, and it just said, meet me at the Coliseum. And I said, all right, man, we're fucking doing this. Like, I'm not going to be stopped. Like, everybody needs purpose in what they're doing. Everyone needs drive. They need a mission. For me, everything just kind of came right. All the trains got to the station at the right time. Purpose, timing, vengeance, to settle the score, whatever it is, honoring my friend, keeping a promise. All of it. I was like, okay, we're not going to leave anything to chance. I'm going to give everything to this. I did say, and I told everyone, this is it for me. Like, win, lose, or draw, it's all going to end here. but it just all magically lined up. Everything I was touching, everything I was around, the people that were in my life, I cut out so many negative things that were happening. There was purpose in every step I was taking. I think back, like, you remember the Michael Jackson, Billie Jean video? I only say it's kind of crazy, but there's just that weird effect of when he's walking, the streets would light up. Every square would light up like magic. Like everything he was touching, there was that much power in him. I felt like that was me. Everywhere where I was going, man, like it just felt like it was one step closer towards this happening, like really happening. And I got there to Italy, and the first thing I did, I got there a couple of days early because at this time I was also co-head coach. They were allowing me to compete and be coach because you've got a team of about 70 athletes. It's a 7-day event. I was due to go on day one. So that was the only reason why this worked with my other co-head coaching partner. But he knew how important it was to me, and he wanted me to finish this on my terms. So he gave me a lot of freedom and flexibility to do it. But the first thing I did when I got there, a couple of days early, I went straight to the Coliseum and I had a picture of my buddy and I that we took on the train the day we were going to Rome, like taking this, like, if you call it red eye, it was in the middle of the night from some other town. I went right to the Coliseum. As soon as I got there and checked into the hotel, I took a picture out front. I wrote this Instagram post about it that I've kept my promise. I sent it to his mom. Then I just sat out there on the same stump. I kind of found the area. It might not have been exactly, but the same stump where we sat. I just took it all in. I said, okay, like, you know, we're here. The job's not done. We got to finish this, right? This has been beautiful up to this point. This whole thing has been a gift. This journey, I've enjoyed every second of it, all the suffering, whatever, I've embraced it. But now we got to finish the job, which starts in a couple of days. And, you know, it was just a dream ending. I got to call my own shot, like few athletes ever. And you're an athlete. I mean, you can probably relate to this or just know, like, it's hard to get to end a career on your terms, right? Like that happened to you too, through injury. Like it's sometimes the universe has a different plan in store for you and you have to accept it, and it sucks. And there's other times when you're fortunate, and I don't ever take it for granted, man, that it just lines up beautifully and you call your shot and it ends. And I won. And yeah, man, it just, and you know, ironically too, this is where there's so much magic in this. I know I'm going on about it, but I just get emotional talking about it. The closing ceremonies at the event, they played, there was this dance that was done by these artists, and it was to the Gladiator theme song. So I kept like getting these signs of like magic, right? Like I just kept looking out like, man, like my buddy was with me. And even after I won, when my hand was raised in the final, like there's a beautiful shot I've got, which I'll never lose, of just me pointing up at the sky saying, thanks for staying with me, buddy.
I feel like you just described, I feel like you just described like Rocky's movie right now. You know what I mean? Like this is a total, I could just see you at the end with the flag around your side. You know what I mean? The flag around you, and you're all bloodied up, and you know, you're like, yo, Adrian, you know? So what I think is so cool, you know, Arjun, is that I think that you're so lucky that you decided to find one thing, because this is what I'm always telling our agents, is you find one thing and you make it your life's work. And this was, you know, for this 20 years of your life, basically, this was your one thing, and you made it your life's work. This was a culmination of all the hard work, of all the blood, all the tears, all the sweat, you know, all the relationships, all the training, all the everything. And then it comes down to these moments in your life where you go, man, I mean, you know, you look back, and to me, you know, everything is memories, right? I mean, the whole purpose of life is creating memories and creating moments, right? That you never forget. So I love to travel so much, is because I love to create and have memories and meet new people and make new friends and build new relationships. And, you know, everything is about memories and experiences, you know? And I think that you're a perfect example of what it looks like. And I would encourage everybody watching, everybody listening, I would encourage you, whatever it is, whatever business that you're in, whatever, you know, your passion is, find that one thing and fucking go for it, right? I mean, you know, once and for all, go for it. make it your life's work and go succeed at something. Go try to achieve something. Worst case scenario, you might not be the best in the world. Might not be the world champion. You might not be the whatever, but you're gonna create so many memories along the way. You're gonna create so many experiences along the way that to me is a life worth lived.
It's beautiful, man. I mean, I got goosebumps listening to you say that. I think that's where all of us as humans in this modern day, and it's no one's fault, we're kind of victims of the environment we're in, where we're so spread out, so thin. Everyone is just so high strung and not focused on the one thing, because we want it all. We see this, we see that, we want to pursue this, we want to make money here, I want to do this, I want to start this side hustle, I want to do this. And then you're spread out and you're getting about 5% accomplished of 10 things, which leaves you feeling exhausted. You don't really have any progress. Maybe you have these intermittent highs in the middle because you're doing something, but are you really doing something? Or to your point, are you actually like zeroing in or accomplishing something or becoming great at it or winning at that one thing, whatever it might be, whatever the metric is for winning? It doesn't have to be millions of dollars or a gold medal, whatever, but just achievement, right? And so I think that what you said is so beautiful and it's great. And it's what's missing right now in this world is pick the one thing. There's no shame in it. You're not giving up on other stuff. Find the one thing and go all fucking in on it. Just, burn the boats, as Tony Robbins says, right? If you want to take the island, you're going to have to burn the boats. Take that. There's no going back, right? Break off the side and rear view mirrors. You're only looking forward and just finish it. However long it takes, whether it's a lifetime, decades, months, years, whatever it is, just do it and go all in. And I think that feeling of purpose that you'll end up with at the end of it, or a sense of accomplishment, or the mark that you'll leave on this world and the community and your circle within your family, whatever it is, you did what you were supposed to do. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to move on to something else, great. But if not, you did more than so many people don't ever get to experience or do, because they're so spread out and chasing all these multiple things, right? So
Totally.
well said, man.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I just think that there's a difference when you think about mindset, right? And mindset, in my opinion, is everything, right? In life, and how you raise your kids, and how you build your business, how you lead people. I mean, leadership is everything. And ultimately it's our mindset that's controlling all of that, right? It's that feeling of I'm a victim, or feeling of like I'm going to go be the victor. And I love how in the beginning you were like, there was a lot of shit going on, and a lot of people will sit there and they'll make excuses for an hour, and you're like, but there's no excuses. I had the opportunity, I had the chance, irregardless of anything going on in my life. I have to take full responsibility, right? I mean, I've had a lot of challenges even over the last couple of years, even in my life, that I never experienced in my life. And I look back and I go, it's just making me stronger. It's just making me better. It's just making me tougher. It's just making me more resilient. And so when you look at, though, if we were to kind of, shift over a little bit into financial, kind of that aspect of what you're doing right now, what are some of the current trends that you're seeing? I mean, obviously interest rates are still a little bit high, and now it is interesting because my parents, right, 40 years ago when they bought their house, their interest rates were like 12 or 13% or something. So in retrospect, it's not very high, but ultimately, when you go from 2% to 7%, it's a big deal. What do you see as the trends that are happening right now? Where do you see the future of mortgages and real estate and things like that?
Well, the sky, the media would lead you to believe that the sky is falling, right? And I think all of us that work in the financial services sector, or in mortgage, consulting, real estate, it's our job to kind of interpret what's going on and tell people that the sky is not falling, and understand that whatever the narrative that's out there, there's an agenda behind it to get clicks, or start a doom loop or whatever. So you take a step back and recognize, one, housing is never going out of style. People will always need shelter. Life is going to continue happening. People get married, they have children, they get divorced, they relocate, they get a new job, they buy a second or whatever. Like, this never stops. Nobody puts their wedding plans on hold, or their family, they're building a family plan on hold simply because of what's going on with mortgage rates. They don't stop like, wait a minute, should we book that wedding at the Pelican? Because I read that mortgage rates were here. It's like, no, nobody gives a shit. Like, we're moving on with life and we'll just deal with this then, right? So recognize that. And we have within our company and in our business that life's still going to happen. And the rate is the rate. But we're focused on the opportunity that comes by way of this. And that's the way that I think everyone should look at it, whatever's going on in any market, whether it's negative, whatever, where's the opportunity in this? Whatever bad news comes or disruption or whatever, there's an opportunity in all of it. You just got to find it, right? This is the difference between the ultra successful and the people that are still scratching their heads waiting for perfect pastures, because you're never going to get them. So for us, that's what we're seeing out there. I do think and acknowledge, I'm not naive to this. It is getting more and more difficult for people to buy a home, which is why when everybody does ultimately break through, those that do, it's a huge, huge accomplishment. It's nothing to, dismiss or marginalize. Like, it's a major accomplishment to be able to buy a home. So if we look back to the analogy you just gave, or the comparison you gave, which I like, about like our parents' time, right? We look back to 1980 versus now. The difference in home prices from then to now, relatively speaking, are about 9x. Homes are 9 times more expensive than they were back then. So now let's continue on down. Monthly mortgage payments, as a result, are about 6 times more. And interest rates were about 15% at that time. And now if you look, they're about 7.5, depending on what type of product you're in, it's about half. So their monthly payments are 6 times more expensive. The problem is, and this is where it gets shocking for everybody, is that incomes for individuals have not kept up with that. The income average is about only 4x. So between 1980 and now. So if incomes haven't kept up, but home prices are 9 times more expensive and monthly payments are 6 times more expensive, but incomes have only gone up at a clip of 4x, you see where the imbalance is, which is why it's becoming so difficult. This is why, to kind of almost take the other angle of what we were talking about and focusing one thing, why the gig economy has exploded the way it has, people trying to find ways to make additional stream or create additional streams of income, getting smarter with their money earlier, investing, saving, because if you don't, relying on, and this might not be popular with people, or might be a little bit shocking or almost insulting, but it's the truth, to just sit back and rely on the salary you're making, the one stream of income for the rest of your life, and then think I'll be able to retire or Social Security will be, it's not going to be there for you. It won't. And the one stream is not going to be able to keep up with. Just use and look back at the example I just gave you, because we have that sample size from 1980 to now. Incomes did not keep up. I don't see anything that's going to change that. And you work in this space as well, man. I mean, in dealing with financial services, I don't know if you're in agreement with that, but you're going to have to do something else and get smarter. So I would urge people at any age, at any phase in their life, it's never too late. Start getting around the right people, getting around the right team of advisors and people to either create additional streams of income or start to look at this holistically, because trying to just operate on a straight line with this, the future of housing is going to have a very different look 5 to 10 years from now. It's not going to go away. Again, shelter never goes out of style, right? People need a place to live. It's just going to get a little bit different. It's going to come with its challenges, but it's not to say that it's impossible,
Well, I mean, everybody thinks it's impossible because they keep being told it's impossible.
Right.
So you keep saying the same thing over and over again. I mean, people are going to eventually believe it.
Right.
The challenge I see is when you look at education today, and I think education is extremely flawed. So you have these teachers that know nothing about money. They know nothing about, the economy. They know nothing about building wealth, and they're actually in charge of our children for 8 hours a day for, what is that, 10, 12 years or something like that. And so that's scary to me. And then we hand over our adult kids to another set of teachers, which now they're called professors. And now we give them over to the professors, which again, if most professors are broke, most professors know nothing about wealth. They've never created anything or built anything. I'm saying most.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think this is a huge challenge, because what they're saying, because usually it's a mirror, right? They're using their own situation and they're saying, well, I'm broke. I have no money. I don't know what I'm doing financially. I have no financial education. So therefore they tell the kids, they're like, well, things are tough right now. The economy's bad. Interest rates are high. I mean, think about it in the example of my parents. If they wouldn't have bought the house, they bought the house for $140,000. Yeah. And they were paying like 13% interest. But if they wouldn't have bought it, today they wouldn't have a $1.3 million house.
That's right.
Right? That's basically paid off, You know what I mean? So, I mean, let's look at that for a second. So the people today that say, I don't want to buy because of the interest rates, well, that doesn't make any sense because, look out, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, is the house right now that you're buying for $1 million or 500,000 or whatever the number is that thing going to be worth more than it is today? Are you going to earn a return on investment in the next 20 years? I would bank on, and I would, highly bet on the fact that that house is going to grow in value and you will make a return on your money versus not doing it.
Yeah.
And so if it makes sense, but getting back to the education thing. So I think it's sad that we're educating our kids to be afraid to take a risk or be afraid. And then on top of that, they go, hey, you need to go get a job. You need to get benefits and get your salary and life will be great. And the challenge with that is they get out of college. This is why 50% of the kids, they end up moving back with their parents because they can't get a job after college because they have no experience at all. So the jobs say, hey, man, we love that you went to college. It's great, but you have no experience, so we can't use you. So then they go become a dishwasher or a bartender or something like that. It's just a totally screwed up system right now of a lot of it's like the blind leading the blind, a bunch of uneducated people teaching a bunch of uneducated people, and nobody knows what they're doing. And again, like you said, you get yourself around a lot of successful people. You get yourself around. I mean, that's what I did at 21 years old. I went into business. I was financially independent by 28, not because I was the smartest. I don't have the highest IQ. I was a bad kid in school. I got, C minuses, D pluses. That was my average, grade in school. I wasn't the most likely to succeed. But guess what? At 21, I said, hey, I'm going to go hang out with Anthony Robbins. And by the way, that's what I did. 6 months into business, I went to my first Anthony Robbins seminar. I hung out with Anthony Robbins. I hung out with a bunch of really, really, successful people. Just like you were saying, you get around those people, you start learning stuff, right? So who was some of your mentors early on that helped you?
Well, there were people, there were some in the athletic space. A lot of them were just people, successful business owners. I went to my first Tony Robbins event in 2014, actually right after I got back from Rome, when I was on a high and I didn't want the highs to end. So I wanted more personal growth. So I went to that. Huge fan of anything that's done in that space. But a lot of the people were just people that were close to me. They were former bosses. There were people that ran successful businesses. Some of the alumni of my fraternity that I was in college, because I went to a school where I went to school, our fraternity was very, very prominent. Like governors for the state of Nevada had come out of there, US senators. So it was a lot of well-connected people, but it was all about creating a network, right? And just shaking as many hands as possible, getting to know people, getting curious, staying humble. And here's the other thing. It's STFU. It's what my coach says. Just shut the fuck up. Don't talk. Just listen, right? Get around people and listen. Too many people are saying, you got to make your mark and you got to be bossy in there and, let everyone know what you are. No. Sit back. I want to be the quietest, dumbest guy in the room. I just want to be inquisitive. And that always served me well. Through good times and bad times, it helped me get out of certain bad times much faster than I would have by simply doing whatever I had to do to get in the room and getting around successful people. So it wasn't necessarily any big figures or names or well-to-do names. That came a little bit later. A lot were, people in politics or in policy, but they're not anyone that's going to be a household name. They were figures that were big in the state where I was in. But these guys all came from very successful business backgrounds. And to your point, I think that is where the disservice is within the educational system, right? It's like we serve up and teach people how to be good employees. We don't teach entrepreneurship or the value of money or how to use money for good. Then they demonize it when you get into certain studies that it's bad and that people with too much money and concentration of wealth is bad. And no one's ever been taught to properly harness it or see what the good that can actually come from it, because it does, right? It does create that. And all global events center around those 5 things, MONEY. But no one's taught that stuff, right? So I'm glad you bring that up. And it's kind of upon all of us in terms of those who advocate for financial literacy and are trying to help move the needle in people's lives and teach them a little bit more. But I'm hoping that one day that'll change, that within the educational system, you'll start to see that a little bit of an implementation about understanding money, how it works, how to save, just even that would have been valuable, because you take The higher educational system that you're talking about with professors who don't even come from any sort of private successful background, right, in the private sector, which is sad, but yet they're the ones that are teaching you or, you know, instructing you mainly from a book, not through life experience or anything tangible. They're just reading a course back out to you. And then on top of that, because this happened to me and I fell prey to it, you have the credit card industry that's out there on college campuses getting kids into college or like into these credit cards. I was 20 grand in debt like before my senior year of college. I paid it off quickly because the mortgage industry happened to be this like floodgates of cash flow that I got out of it. But it was scary because I didn't even realize, and they were almost like preying on people. And you got to remember, right? The United States economy is predicated on consumption. So unless you want to be part of that problem, and I'm not saying don't root for the US economy. I'm the biggest fan of the US economy. I always want it to be strong, but understand how it works and what makes it tick. And sometimes who benefits from that and who is actually like, you know, kind of the workhorses that are doing it at their own personal expense or their own credit. So we got to be careful. We got to teach people more about this stuff. It's important to have a grasp on it. But I'm hopeful like you that one day that really shifts, you know, to where people are actually being taught about money more.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about money, you know, like you said before, the passive income or the reoccurring income or the side hustles and having other streams of income and things like that. I mean, this has to be taught at some point in time. People got to realize that just because you have a job that you're working 9 to 5 doesn't mean you can't work, you know, after 5 o'clock. Doesn't mean that like, okay, 5 o'clock, I'm dead. I got to go home and I got to watch Netflix all night long. I mean, you don't have to do that. You literally could at 5 o'clock when you get out of your job, you could start a side hustle. You could do something different, part-time, whatever it is, and try to grow something, try to build something that ultimately could run without you. That was, and by the way, that was always my, looking back, that's what changed my life, right? Is I built an agency where we have 1,500 agents, we have 55 locations where, you know, they don't need me anymore. So I don't have to be physical. I don't have to sell anymore. I don't have to recruit anymore. I don't have to be there anymore. Nobody needs me. Nobody wants. Matter of fact, a lot of them don't even like me. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter anymore. It's just like, it's an unbelievable thing when you experience exactly what you're talking about is like, because look, your one income making 40,000, these people out there, they're making 40 grand and they're like, oh, you know, life is so terrible because I can't, you know, afford a house and everything's got me priced out. And then what is it? It's all woe is me bullshit, right? Versus saying, wait a minute, I can change. I can do something different. I can keep my job, start something else, build something, add that extra. Maybe I could go build another 3,000 or 4,000 of income per month. Now I'm making 8,000 a month. Now buying a house is actually feasible. Now it's possible to do something like that. And then the other thing is, like you said, America is built on consumerism. Like people need to start living below their means.
Please, thank you.
Enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, enough with the, you know, you think everybody's got to have Gucci, man. I mean, give me a break. I mean, you know, buy the nice things when you have the money. That's fine. But that should be after you saved 50%. You know, what's interesting is you look at like China and you wonder, you know, these people, they save so much money. They're building so much wealth and they're creating so much, all their savings, and they're buying real estate and properties and land and all these different things. And a lot of them, they're doing it together, right? Because they're saving such a large percent of their income. Most Americans, we're like at a negative savings rate. So we're in trouble, man. I mean, because everybody they see on Instagram, they think, oh, that person just flew a private jet. It's like, wait a minute. I got a lot of money and I ain't doing private jets. I'm not doing like to me, doing private jets all over the place when you're not hundreds of millions of dollars. I think it's just crazy, right? I mean, the amount of clothes people are buying, the amount of money people are spending on shoes and cars and all these different things. When you don't have the money, don't do it. Build yourself a nest egg of 10 million, 20 million, whatever the number is for whoever, and get yourself solid. I always thought about myself as like on an airplane, they say, you know, oxygen mask, put on your oxygen mask first, then you go help the world. That's what I thought about. I'm like, I'm going to take care of me first. Once I take care of me, then I'm going to go change the world. Then I'm going to go help a lot of people. Then I'm going to go and you know, and it's interesting because Warren Buffett just talked about it the other day again.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't even give to charity right now because I think I could build more wealth over the long term and then give it all away at the end.
Yeah.
And I probably make a bigger impact that way. So anyways, what do you think about all that?
No, you know, to your point, I think the obsession with labels and brands and what does this say about me? Because we're all worried about how we look and how we come off. The reality is, if you actually take a step back, the wealthiest of people, they don't wear any of those labels. They got to a point where they've created so much wealth that they recognize that their validity, their sense of worth and purpose is not tied up in a material possession or label. It is actually in the purpose or the calling of what they're doing. There's a mission that's so much more important that anything material actually almost disgusts them. You won't find the wealthiest of people wearing those labels, right? Now, celebrities are different, right? But most of them aren't doing well financially. They're spending way more than they actually make, which is why so many athletes, actors, actresses end up broke, but they're the ones wearing the labels. So we all think that that's a pinnacle of success, and that's what we celebrate because we see it. It's like, I want to buy that label. I want to fly private. I want to get that Gucci belt because it's going to say something about me. And that's just kind of the way American insecurity works, unfortunately. But there's only one winner in that equation, and that is the manufacturer, that is the US economy, right? That benefits from that type of consumption, and you blowing your entire check on that when you've done nothing to further yourself. So when your mission, when your calling, when your purpose, when the goal you have for yourself, for your family, for your business, whatever is so much bigger and stronger, you won't even care about any of that stuff. Look at Mark Zuckerberg, for example, right? The guy looks, and I always joke because I'm here in the Bay Area where there's so many tech entrepreneurs. The homeless look is in. Jeans and a t-shirt and a hoodie, probably that cost him no more than like that whole outfit's probably no more than $150. Some Adidas sneakers, he doesn't care, right? Now I'll listen to him because that guy's doing okay. He's making money, he's having an impact, like things are happening, and he's not doing it by way of getting himself caught up in material sites and possessions and the way he comes off looking to the rest of the world, right? His mission is much stronger. So I appreciate you saying that because there's too much of an obsession with that stuff. Look, I'm not saying don't enjoy things, don't stay at nice hotels. Look, I'm a Ritz-Carlton fan. I love staying. I was joking with you earlier. I had my wedding at the Pelican Hill. It took me years to pay that thing off. I'm just kidding, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I enjoy nice things too. But to your point, build the foundation. Put your mask on first. Time and place, right? Don't spend and take out the luxury car lease when you're still paying rent and paying somebody else's mortgage. Build up your own set of assets and do those things. And then you can reward yourself at that time. We have it all backwards here. It's time to kind of reverse course. So I'm in full agreement with you on there, man. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. All right. I want to get your take on, because I actually was up in San Francisco maybe 2 months ago. And what is this place, man? I mean, it's going downhill, man. I mean, some of these parts of town, I mean, it's like, it's so sad. I mean, is it the politics? Is it the leadership? Is it the just overrun by, you know, because it's kind of like just open, you know, to anybody? Yeah. What's going on, man? What's your take on that?
I think it's, you know, and this gets me in trouble. I got actually canceled. I got suspended off of Instagram and had to start a new account about a year and a half ago because I got really vocal during the mayor's recall election. And so I don't mind because I'm just going to say it, you know, and, you know, if it's not free speech, then it's not free speech. That's just the bottom line here. So you got to be able to speak up about stuff. And I wasn't calling out names or even using profanity. I just said that if we don't do something to address all this post-COVID reopening crap that's going on, it's going to lead to businesses closing, which is ultimately going to hurt real estate because that's my industry. I said 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It was the truth, but I got suspended for that. So to your point, to your question, what has actually done it? It's been just a very progressive, overly empathetic approach to running a city. And it's complete fiscal mismanagement with absolutely zero accountability. There's checks, but no balances, right? This is one of the largest municipal budgets in the world as a city. I think it's like the 8th largest. Don't quote me on that. I need to double check it, but it is a massive one. But there's no accountability for stuff. And it's just because it's the way it's always been. New York went through this in the 1980s. Right, the city was rife with crime, and the murder rate was as high as it's ever been. The streets were filthy. Businesses were leaving. It wasn't a place to raise a family. and then a guy named Rudy Giuliani. And I'm talking about Rudy Giuliani from back then, not Rudy Giuliani of today, because some people are like, it's not really him. You don't know. Rudy Giuliani came in with a spine of steel and says, we're going to clean this up. I'm putting the city first. It's not about politics. And that Rudy, I really respect and love, because what he did in a city that didn't normally necessarily accept people of his actual political background and belief and value system, he got the city completely turned around. San Francisco is basically at that same crossroads right now with 1980. The COVID policy was very, very restrictive, no doubt. And I can say that now. I was saying it back then, but it got me in trouble. There's very few people that would disagree with me now. And if they're disagreeing with me, they're lying. It was very, very overly restrictive. They kept moving the goalpost on businesses. It led to an exodus of people out of here. The homeless population 4x, 5x, 10x, whatever you want to call it, right? Having safe zones for people to do drugs is just not anything I ever imagined I would ever see. Rather than actually dealing with the problem, they're just kind of enabling the problem and trying to contain it. But that's the wrong approach, because people are too afraid of stepping on toes or not coming off as empathetic. And now you have a spoiled brat, if you will, here's the analogy, that you raised until the age of 22 that's still living with you, and now you want to discipline him. It's almost too late, right? That work should have been done. So there's a big election that's coming up here for the mayor's race. There's a candidate who I'm a good friend with who comes from a very kind of almost like a centrist stance, which is what this city is going to need, and some accountability there. And he actually has run businesses. He used to work for a private equity fund. He understands how money works. So I'm very excited about this guy, instead of, just being part of a political machine or being controlled by special interests, because that's what we've had a string of, unfortunately. And it's put this city into the state it's in. This was one of the most beautiful cities and iconic places where so much imagination and possibility was in the air. Like, you could say hello
look,
to
I've been going to San Francisco my whole life, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like I love San Francisco.
It's a great place. That's why I
was there a
came.
couple of months ago, and I'm like, it's a shit show, man. And so, I mean, literally a shit show.
No joke about that. Daniel,
No
I'll tell you this. You
Yeah.
came 2 months ago. That's actually much more improved from what it was, say, a year ago. A year ago, you would have left. You would have walked out and like, I'm out. It wasn't a safe place.
What I didn't understand is that the governor came in because China, the president of China came in. I don't know if this was what, 3 or 4 months ago. So
And Biden.
Then he cleaned Biden, and they cleaned up the entire city.
Yeah.
Just for China. Now,
And President Joe. And
that is the craziest.
It's an insult. It was an insult to the citizens of the small business community, because people asked him, why did this need to happen now? What, like, you cleaned it up for them, these 2 house guests that were here for a week. And some of that is stuck. Some of that is stuck. I don't know what they did with displacing people, but there are a lot of streets and areas that were shitty, and they're pretty freaking clean now. So it's stuck.
Right.
But the fury and the rage and the disgust with this came from some people that were actually like awake during the time, which is me. I'm one of those people. I'm like, why didn't you do this for the tax-paying citizens, the small business owners, and the people that are in the fight that lost everything during COVID because you kept their business shut down? You said, no, you can open. No, you can't open. Every week it was a new thing. No transparency. Kept moving the goalposts. You couldn't clean it for them, who actually fund your city, but for Joe Biden and the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, I think it needs
Communist Party.
Thank you.
We're not communists, man.
We're not communists. Like, you'll roll out the red carpet and vacuum and tidy up and break out the Lysol and disinfectant and clean the streets up for them. And if that gets me shut down for even saying it, I don't care at this point.
I mean, I'm glad you're saying it, because I'm like your biggest fan now, because I mean, you're willing to say it, because nobody ever look. I mean, this whole COVID thing, to me, it was ridiculous. I mean, now people are coming out to saying, I mean, I just heard it the other day. I forget who said it, but a lot of people are now using ivermectin to combat COVID and just get a overall, kind of protection of health, right? And all the doctors that were getting canceled back in 2020, like literally their accounts were being shut down. They were being censored, you name it, because they were saying that ivermectin, and then even the media was making fun of it, saying, oh, it's a horse thing for horses or animals or whatever. And all, I mean, it was such a blatant disregard for medical, real medical science. I mean, the thing has been around for 20, 30 years. People have been using it for 20, 30 years, to combat malaria and all these other different diseases. But it's infuriating to me that all of these little conspiracy theories that we all had back in 2020, they're now coming true. What the fuck?
It turned out to be true,
right? I mean, that is like mind-boggling to me.
Well, I think there'll be a referendum here, whether it's locally here in the race, to fully answer your question about San Francisco, and I'm hopeful, because we all hope for the city to turn around. I don't know what it's going to look different. Many of these retailers and businesses have left. Thankfully, a lot of AI companies have come in and taken up a lot of real estate. So it's going to have a new iteration. San Francisco 2.0, 3.0, whatever you want to call it, it's going to look different. But I'm hopeful for it, like everyone is, because we all want to root for major cities in the US because the country needs it. And this can hopefully turn into something else. But to your point, I think there's going to be a national referendum on, all of us that were saying, hey, it's not that people are crazy or they don't want to believe you when you're bringing up an opposing view, but isn't that the basis of science, is that it's an ongoing discussion and that it evolves? Because correct me if I'm wrong, there were scientists that said the world was flat. Now, anyone that objected to that, if they would have been arguing with them and getting in their face saying it's flat, it's science, shut up, where would that have led us to, right? It is an ongoing thing. So you should welcome discussion. You should welcome debate, dialogue, do it respectfully, of course. But even those that were trying to do it respectfully, to your point, were canceled, dismissed. Some are even missing. Journalists in China, right, who we rolled out the red carpet for here. If you are a journalist or a medical professional that spoke out there in China, you're either dead, missing, you've had some type of a physical gag order put on you. I don't mean just an actual legal one, a physical one. And that's how you're treated because you simply have a differing point of view. Like, I will always champion free speech and open dialogue and discourse. That's what makes this country great. You can talk to people, share your views, don't share your views, but you can't cancel people simply because they don't agree with you. You can't call them, supporters of this party or that party, or say that you're nuts, or that you only watch that news network. That's why you're coming up with it. Like, where has it gotten to in this country where you can't just have an opposing view? And if you're not part of the mainstream, you're suddenly some jerk or some outsider or crazy. Like, call me crazy then, but I'm gonna stay on that side, because to your point, every conspiracy theory that people came up with over the last 20 years, some overwhelming percentage of them have either turned out to be true, and no one will give anyone credit for that. They never will. So I'm glad I can actually be on a podcast like this and we can air it out and talk about it. And I hope, everyone that's listening to this recognize that most of them turned out to be true. And that's not an I gotcha moment or I told you so moment. It's just, hey, just listen to people, right? You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to swallow it. Just listen. It's okay. Stop taking it so like as if it's some kind of threat, because it didn't fit the national narrative. And that's why people got canceled, right? And that's why it got to that point. But I'm hoping there's a massive referendum here in a couple months, and we can actually get back to a place where we can talk and have debate and discussion and challenge things, because it makes us better. It makes us smarter. It makes us sharper, as opposed to just being so linear with it and taking it hook, line, and sinker.
100%, man. You got it down, man. You are on fire.
Thanks for opening the forum for that. I appreciate it.
There's no question. Next time I come to San Francisco, me and you are having lunch or dinner or something, because I think that we could probably extend this podcast another 2 hours, just on things that we've probably been through in the last 2-3 years now. And I just think it's important that we all start talking about it and letting people know that it's okay to have differing opinions and it's okay to think different. That's what it means to be an American, man. And I love America, man. I want to see San Francisco do good. It doesn't make me feel good when I see the country going through the things that it's going through right now. I mean, you can't have a sovereign country without free speech. And without closed borders and without some sort of rule of law. I mean, you can't go into CVS and Walgreens and just steal whatever you want and think we're going to have an okay society, or poop on the streets, or just let homeless run wild anywhere they want to go, wherever they want to go, and bringing down values of real estate or hurting communities. You just can't have that. Not to say that we're not going to be empathetic in some sort of way to try to help these people that
Of
really
course.
need help. Of course, you're going to help these people. We all have hearts, man. We're Americans, and most of us Americans, we have some sort of religious views and values, which every religion, by the way, regardless of what religion you are, we all believe in taking care of the poor and helping people that are less fortunate. Every single religion has that built in. I think that we're going to get along because the truth is that we think the same in a lot of ways. And we think the same because we're both American patriots, I think. I mean, I think we love America and we want America to be good. And I think ultimately, we got to continue to fight the fight. And it is a little bit of a fight right now. I mean, we got 50% of the country divided in a lot of different ways. And I think, us bringing each other back together in one room to say, look, we're all Americans, man. Let's fight together on the same team, right? Let's stop fighting against each other. We all want the same things, right? We want a safe country. We want the rule of law. We want to be happy, right? We want economic success. We want to do well. And that's what makes us Americans. And that's why we're the greatest country in the world. And so, but that's why we're going to be good friends, I think.
Exactly right, man.
But anyways, hey man, look, the last question I wanted to ask you is, what lessons or what couple tips can you throw out to our audience? And, as we wrap this up, to like that, that small entrepreneur, man, maybe they're struggling a little bit right now. Things ain't going well for them. They're just trying to, like, you made it, man. You built a level of success in your life that most, would only dream of having. And the question is now, what do we got to do now, man?
Yeah.
The people that are just fighting the fight, man, what do they got to remember?
I think you remember, so, this goes off of what we were talking about here in terms of our values. And this is a Tony Robbins line, right? Remember that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. So everything that's going on as an entrepreneur, all the struggle, it's supposed to be hard. Life is supposed to be hard. Working is supposed to be hard. Building wealth is supposed to be hard. It's, silly, right? If it was easy, everyone would have it. Everyone would do it. And even then, some people would still manage to fuck it up. But just recognize, number one, it's supposed to be hard. Embrace the struggle. But I'll tell you this, because I traveled a lot last year. I spoke at a lot of conferences. I got in a lot of rooms. I hosted some big events. I talked to successful people because, again, I've stayed curious, even at 45, the age of 45, from when I was, 19, 20 years old in a fraternity around some really successful alumni. I always want to be curious, but I'll tell you this, the three things that I've discovered, or not discovered, but I've cemented that I recognize in every successful person is, number one, they always get into the room. They find a way to get in the room, meaning get around other successful people, and they never want to stop learning. So do what you got to do. Get to that conference, get to that event. Even if you got to sometimes kind of stretch to make it happen, just do whatever you got to do to get into that room. Secondly, always be committed to sharpening your craft. Be relentless, be obsessed with getting better. Some small percentage better, make progress towards something. Athletically, physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever it is, just get a little bit better. Be obsessed with it. And lastly, never bitch about the market. Never bitch about your circumstances. So if you do that, those three things, that's basically it. Don't bitch about the market, be obsessed with your craft, and find a way to get into the room. Elbow your way, beg your way, and steal your way. Whatever you got to do, just get in the room. If you do that, there'll be growth for you on the other side of all those challenges. I promise you, it'll never fail you. It's never failed me. I'm sure you could agree with it too, my man. But that's what I would tell any young entrepreneur, or it doesn't matter, anyone who's a newer entrepreneur at any age in your life, stick with that.
Love it, man. Love it. Great minds think alike. And you couldn't have said it better. What I want everybody, first of all, tell us how we can connect with you. Tell us a little bit about, how our audience can support you in some way, and how we can, get a hold of you if we need to know more about what you do.
I'll tell you this, man, this has been one of the best, no joke, podcasts, refreshing conversations I've had with anybody in as long as I can remember. So thank you so much for having me on. Obviously, connecting with you and more of your people is clearly my tribe. And the best way to connect with me, guys, is on Instagram. It's Arjun Mortgage, just ARJUN Mortgage. There's a cartoon caricature profile head that pops up. Then you'll know you're on the right one. But that's the way I like to interface with people. I exchange and connect with so many people on there. And yeah, so please get in touch with me there. I love to collaborate, talk, chop it up, whatever it is.
And for everybody that's watching, listening, especially been following me for years, please go out, reach out to Arjun and just say, hey, dude, thanks so much, man, for coming out on Wealth on the Beach podcast with Daniel Alonzo. And just thank him. Thank him for his time. Thank him for his wisdom. Thank him for his journey. Because without successful people, without these conversations, we don't get better. We all improve. We all get better when we're around people with incredible mindsets, with incredible work ethic, with incredible, thoughts about the future. These are the kind of people you want to surround yourself with, and ultimately, make sure that you're connecting with all of them. So make sure you go follow him on Instagram, say what's up, send him a DM, blow up his DMs, let him know that we appreciate all of what he did for us today. As always, continue to dream bigger than ever, get after it, but most importantly, do it now. God bless. We'll see you at the top.